All right, so the TSM and Doublelift controversy continues after this week, president of TSM, Lena, was overheard talking about a player's contract on Doublelift's stream.
Not up to me. Like, for example, no one wants to pick up Dart. That's not my fault.
And FaZe Banks is back in the news after he went on a podcast recently and admitted that he was involved in a skin gambling website that helped pay for FaZe's CSGO team.
We flew there private, sat down with the guy who runs the country, basically paid him like $100,000 and he gave us the license and we had this whole estate.
And it seems like Riot Games might make some big changes to League of Legends solo queue after a video from former pro and content creator Voyboy blew up online.
If no one says anything, if I don't say anything, if I don't try to use my platform to at least vocalize these concerns, how much longer?
And in our weekly dose of Valorant news, we've got a giant patch that's going to change the game and even more pro players from other esports jumping ship to play Valorant.
This is the question mark. Are the nerd cameras dead or are they alive?
All right, so it's official. Doublelift is a part of TSM. But you might remember while this was happening, people were wondering if there's a potential conflict of interest here, because TSM's president also happens to be his girlfriend. Now, Keith, we actually have more news about this ongoing situation.
Yeah, so the other day, Doublelift was streaming League of Legends, as he tends to do, and you can pretty clearly hear Lena in the background talking about another player on the TSM roster.
Picking for this guy was maybe a mistake.
Not up to me. Like, for example, no one wants to pick up Dart. That's not my fault.
Now in the clip, you can faintly hear Lena say, "It's not my fault, nobody wants to pick up Dardoch." And my immediate thought was like, can we not do this in another room or something? I mean, Keith, how did you feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, this has certainly caused a bit of a shitstorm on Twitter. And let's be honest here, before all of this happened, some of those conflict of interest claims were, in my estimation, a little bit premature. People saw her as the president and him as a player, and immediately decided that bad things were going to happen. But now, we have at least a little bit of real evidence showing her having a private conversation about another player on the team, at least within earshot, right?
Yeah, dude, 100%, I agree with you, and I really feel for Dardoch in this situation. Like, you gotta imagine, he must be pissed, and like, if you're his agent, his value as a free agent just dropped dramatically because of this 30-second clip.
Yeah, and I think that's why you see both Reggie and Lena targeting Dardoch in their apologies. They certainly understand that they messed up pretty bad for him.
So FaZe Banks recently admitted that back in the day, FaZe Clan were involved in a skins gambling website and actually used some of that money to purchase their CSGO team. Dude, this story is fucking wild.
Yeah, he went on this podcast called the Bad News Podcast and told this story basically from start to finish of going to Antigua to finesse money using skin gambling to help support the buying of a CSGO roster.
With these kids, I came up with this idea for a different way to do it, and we branded it the right way. And my motivation for doing it actually was at the time we weren't making enough money to buy a CSGO team. All in, the venture was going to cost us like $1 million, and we definitely did not have anything close to that. So my brain, we got to finesse it. We got to figure out how to make the money to buy this team now. So we create this website. We were making like $200,000 a day. And we set it up in Antigua. We flew there private, sat down with the guy who runs the country, basically paid him like $100,000 and he gave us the license and we had this whole estate.
Again, after watching this clip, I immediately thought, why in the hell would you talk about this? You denied it for years, and now you're openly admitting that you gave the head of Antigua $150,000 for gambling licenses. Like, Jesus Christ. But I mean, Keith, you're coming at this slightly differently, right?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, FaZe was actually investigated by a lot of journalists in the esports space back when this was happening in 2016 when FaZe picked up their first Counter-Strike roster. People wanted to know whether they were involved in skin gambling and in what capacity. But to me, it's a little different now, right? FaZe Banks is not exactly an esports guy anymore. He's spending most of his time hanging out with Lil Pump and Nyjah Houston and partying. FaZe Clan's not all games. They've got this whole entertainment brand. And for an entertainment guy who's tattooed and wearing jewelry and trying to act as cool as possible at all times, making $200,000 on skin gambling to finesse a CSGO team, I guess is kind of a good look.
Dude, I really wonder what those fucking parties are like, you know? Like...
Yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. There's another side of this coin, right? Skin gambling has a huge negative connotation, and I don't want to take that away from the subject, because the fact is, Valve investigated all of this. these companies often preyed on people that were not old enough to gamble. So I'm not trying to make excuses for Banks. I'm not saying that what he was doing was moral or whatever, but at least now I can sort of understand where his head's at when he's decided to admit to all of this.
We've really been welcomed into like the cool part of like culture, like like really like more so than anyone else. Like actors and actresses can like eat a dick, but like for the most part, but like as far as like music and athletes, like those motherfuckers really know what time it is. Like they all do.
All right, dude, you might have seen a ton of stuff around our next story. Voyboy, he's a former League of Legends pro. Now he's a super popular content creator. A few days ago, he released a video basically talking about how terrible solo queue as an experience is right now. And surprising things came out of this, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, another in a long line of people who play their game all the time that are upset about the solo queue experience, so they make a video on YouTube and hope that the developer takes notice. But in this case, it seems like the developer actually took notice.
If people can do this in front of like, you know, an audience and see that there's nothing being done, if every person complains about it, if Tyler, if me, if all the streamers, all the pro players are saying that solo queue is in such a bad state and people are just running rampant and terrorizing and holding games hostage all the time, then how does the average player feel? How does the average player feel in their games when they know that someone can do that and not get in trouble? And the people who are, you know, pretty malicious and are ruining the games and the experiences for other players are never, you know, facing any consequences, right?
In his video, Voyboy brought up problems like constantly pinging, inting, stream sniping and ghosting, and champion draft griefing. And then Riot responded in their blog post basically addressing all those problems and saying that they were working on things for right now, the short term, the moderate term, and then the long term. And Keith, I think this is actually a really cool response from a developer.
Yeah, I mean, it's surely the appetizer sampler of problems with League of Legends solo queue, that's for sure. And I mean, yeah, of course, it's good to see a developer come out and acknowledge that there's problems and be willing to take action on them. What's maybe most interesting to me is, as someone who's played their fair share of League of Legends, but also played other games, League of Legends is actually one of the more tame solo queue experiences. Like, at least when you're getting griefed, it's in chat and not over voice comms in CSGO or Valorant. So, I mean, I hope that some of these other developers will take notice from Riot.
Voyboy has released a video recently, kind of made waves going out onto the internet. Voyboy has been a long-standing member of the League community, and we can assure you here at Riot that that is something that's taken very seriously. We are always watching, we are always iterating on that process, and the team is you know, working around the clock to make sure that is something that can be resolved in a timely manner. Voyboy, we hear you, man. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your commitment to League over the years.
Speaking of Riot Games, Valorant just got a giant update. Sage was nerfed, the cap on the round loss bonus was reduced. Keith, what did you take away as the biggest piece of news out of all this?
I mean, well, first of all, Riot Games does not seem afraid to change Valorant. We get new updates like every week. And with this patch, first of all, it's huge. Second of all, I think maybe the biggest thing are some of these exploit issues. Like a lot of those Cypher cameras, the ones that are like hidden in boxes, or that one that's hidden in the frog's butt on Haven. They took away a lot of the crazy Cypher cameras, and they balanced a lot of these characters. You know, Cypher's cage no longer slows people. You know, I know there's been a lot of Sage nerfs, and people are pretty happy about that because Sage is a little bit OP. I mean, all in all, we got a lot of upgrades, both on maps and on characters. Even the economy's changed. And I'm personally stoked to see this much happening in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's interesting, because to me it seems like Riot is already treating Valorant like it's fully released. Like, the speed at which they're making changes and the way they're communicating does not seem like this game is in closed beta.
Yeah. One thing I will say, though, is there is still room to grow, right? There's still a lot of broken Cypher cameras. That's natural for a closed beta game, so hopefully those get sewn up. One thing I will say is that they actually reeled back the recoil on a lot of weapons, and some competitive players especially are not super happy about it. You know, some of the appeal to these really tactical shooters is that you have to rein in that recoil to be a very high-level aimer. And these changes, they kind of made some of the guns, the Guardian in particular, some of the LMGs, well, a little bit training wheels, if for lack of a better way of saying it.
Hey, listen, man. Sometimes I need some training wheels. I'm gonna be honest.
Dude, we know you need some fucking training wheels.
So this is the question mark. Are the nerd cameras dead or are they alive? Do we start an only cams now? Now that they think they fixed the nerd cams, do we privately find some?
On top of the patch notes, we had more CSGO players jump ship for Valorant. Most notably to me was Zelsis and Freakazoid.
Yeah, there's also Corey in Overwatch League, who was honestly known as one of the better aimers in the league and won the World Cup with US last year. So, I mean, that's a pretty big loss, and Valorant got a pretty big gain. We're seeing a ton of traction with this game, and one of the big benefits is that we get some pretty sick highlights like this one.
One enemy remaining.
Should be long.
Oh, let's fucking go! Sound up. Sound up.
Does anybody else notice that Devin, when we have a sound up, Devin just goes full Karate Kid?
Oh yeah, he like lifts his hands up in this like almost Kramer-esque gesture and just goes, sound up.